Gedenk. Gedenk, was es hat getan mit deinem Volk, der datische Nazi, Amalek.
Remember. Remember what the German Nazi Amalek did to your people.
Gedenk die 6 Millionen Juden, was seien umgekommen, al-Kiddush Hashem.
Remember the 6 million Jews who perished for the glory of their people. Gedenk Treblinka.
Gedenk Auschwitz.
Gedenk Buchenwald.
Gedenk Majdanek.
Gedenk Sobibor.
Gedenk die Gaskammern und die Krematorias. Gedenk die 6 Millionen.
Jiskadal wie Jiskadash. Wie viel seinen Scheud nicht da? So geheilig sein die Schau. Mir beweinen sie onrasch, Jiskadal wie Jiskadash. Was verblieben ist uns mehr wie die durchgeglitterte auf die Quorum, auf dem Asch, Jiskadal wie Jiskadash.
Man darf nicht kein Tränen, von Tränen wird Kringel. So schwer sein, wie schwer ist die Luft in der Biene. So schwer sein der Blei, welcher läuft von die Finger in Nesten von Bixen, was zählen in Säune. So schwer sein die Klolle, was fällt auf die Sonne. So schwer sein die Faust, was zerfläht die Batzfinger. So stolz sein, so stark sein beim Jossem dem Ponym. Man darf nicht kein Tränen, von Tränen wird Kringel.
Let us remember our brothers and sisters, the homes and schools, the streets and the cities, the Jewish inn by the roadway, the old man with the beard, the mother in her shawl, the girl with her plaits and the toddlers, the thousands of Jewish communities and their families, and the whole Jewish people which was slaughtered on Europe's soil by the Nazi beast.
Let us remember the mother who clutched her child to her breast and fell with it. The babe whose fingers felt for its mother's nipple but found it cold. The legs which sought refuge but found no place to flee.
Let us remember those pure of heart and bright-eyed ones who sacrificed themselves yet could not help.
Let us remember the day full of light, the sun which gazed down on the bloody scaffold, the clear blue sky which saw but was silent, and the hills of ash beneath the blossoming gardens. Let the living remember their dead, for they are before us. Their eyes gaze at us and demand remembrance.
mir schweigen, quor im Wachsen da. S haben sie verpflanzt die Sonne im grünen See zum Blau. S führen Wegen zu Panarz, es führt kein Weg zurück. Ist der Tate wo verschwunden und mit ihm das Glück. Stiller Kind meins, wein nit heut selbst, helf nit kein Gewein. Unser Unglück wellen son im sei, wie nit verstehn. S haben breges euch die Amen, s haben twiss es euch zusammen, nur zu unser Pein kein bissel Schein. Frühling auf'n Land gekommen, nun uns Herbst gebracht. Ist der Tag heint voll mit Blumen, nun seht nur die Nacht. Goldig scheint der Herbst auf Stammen, blüht in uns der Zahl. Bleibt verjossemt, wo am Mames Kind geht auf Ponal. Wie die Wilje geschmiedet, euch gejocht in Pein. Ziehen Kries Eis durch Litte, jetzt in Jammerein. S wird der Heuschech wird zerrunnen, von der finster leichten Sonnen. Reiter, komm geschwind, ich ruf dein Kind. Stiller, Quellen, Quallen, uns in Herz herum. Bis der Teuer wird nicht fallen, sein mir Musen stumm. Frei nicht Kind sich, sie ist dein Schmeichel, jetzt vor uns Verrat. Send dem Frühling soll der Säune wie in Herbster Blatt. Soll der Qual sich ruhig fließen, stiller sei und hoff. Mit der Freiheit kommt der Tate Schlaf, schick in mein Schlaf. Wie die Wilje befreite, wie die Bäume grün beneiter, leicht auf dein Gesicht, auf dein Gesicht, auf dein Gesicht.
A guten Abend. We gather here tonight to commemorate the 83rd anniversary of the April 19th Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Heint der Monnen dem Warschauer Ghetto Aufstand, geben ab Koved, die Helden, was haben gekämpft, als wir sollen weiterleben.
This year, we focus on the heroes, those who showed the greatest courage in the most dire of times, those who, in the words of Patti Kremel, would not allow themselves to be lebendig begraben, buried alive. This heroism came in many forms. It came from those who fought with pistols and handmade grenades, fighters who knew they stood no chance, but chose to resist anyways. It also came from Jews in the ghetto refusing to abandon their heritage, anyone who simply lit candles on Shabbos, or ate matzah during Pesach, ran an underground school or performed an illegal Yiddish concert, acted in defiance of the Nazis, who sought to destroy Jewish identity. For Jews in the ghetto, any act of resistance was a heroic act, an act that showed strength against the Nazis, an act that resisted their efforts to destroy the Jewish people. When describing the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Simcha Rotem, Ajer Ober Kuria, said, "We knew we were going to die." The question was, how? Wir haben gewusst, dass wir wollen nicht überleben. Die Frage ist gewesen, wie soll zu sterben? For many, the answer to that question was imperative, to take up arms. Starving, with no food, little ammunition, and massively outnumbered, partisans decided to fight, to delay the liquidation of the ghetto by an hour, by a day, by some miracle, by a week.
Not everyone in the ghetto could physically fight. Many rebelled against the Nazis by refusing to give up their Jewish identity. The operations of schools, Yiddish theatre performances, and youth groups, as well as authors, poets, and musicians continuing their craft, also required immense bravery. Avram Sutzkever writes about the importance of spiritual resistance in the ghetto. Spielt jiddische Akteuren in Schmattes und in Vent, wo das Leben verkrümmt sich, wie Haar, was hat sich angezündet. Wenn heute Tropens von eurer Liebe Seiden aufstehen und die Gassen krampfen sich wie halbgeschockte Hähne und können sich nicht aufheben. Flieht weg und läuft, spielt Raveren, spielt. Perform, Jewish actors in tatters and in the walls, where life shrivels like hair that caught fire. When red drops of your loved ones are seething on stones, and the alleys convulse like half-slaughtered hens and cannot arise. Fly away, flee. Perform, friends, perform.
In a time of such great oppression, this resistance was no small thing. In the ghetto, the consequences were known, echoed in the immortal words of der Partisaner hymn, Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. This song is written with blood, not with lead. Defiantly practicing Jewish culture meant risking one's life.
Great heroism also came from those who displayed deep humanity when everything around them sought to destroy it. Janusz Korczak chose to accompany the children in his orphanage, knowing they were to be sent to their deaths at Treblinka. Instead of accepting the offer to remain behind, he held children by the hand, singing Yiddish songs on the way to the Umschlagplatz.
Our typical understanding of heroism is challenged when we consider those who were murdered in concentration camps. Their murder cannot be compared to any other form of death. Marek Edelman says, those who were sent to Treblinka, their death was far more heroic. They had to deal with certain death. It was easier to die fighting than in a gas chamber.
Heroism didn't end at the end of the Holocaust. Survivors forged new Yiddish schools, Yiddish theatre groups. They organised the creation of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum, Jewish Care, SKIF and the Bund. Today, 100 years since SKIF was founded in Poland, and 76 years since it was brought to Melbourne by our grandparents. It has not just been kept alive, but it is thriving. The survivors' resistance came from ensuring the strength of the Jewish people, Yiddish language and culture.
Nicht vergessen, nicht vergeben. Not to forget, not to forgive. For decades, this has been the central motif of Holocaust commemoration, a stark reminder, a call to action, a command. We must actively remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered at the hands of the Nazi war machine. It is easy to remember those whose stories have been recorded or transmitted. It is harder, yet equally important, to remember those who left no record, the families whose names have been erased from history, the fighters who fell with no one to remember them. In honouring Nicht Vergessen, we must hold the nameless in our memory as much as the named.
But Nicht Vergeben carries a different weight. Not to forgive. We do not forgive those who committed unspeakable evils. And yet, that refusal is not just directed outwards. It demands something of us as well. For how can we forgive ourselves if we allow the atrocities of the Holocaust to become forgotten? How can we forgive ourselves if we become passive, if we do not actively commemorate? Now, it is up to us all to carry our history, our traditions, our language, the legacy of those who taught, who defied, who laid down their lives for others, those who were murdered. This responsibility doesn't weaken with time. If memory fades, if names are lost, if history is rewritten by the stark denial, erasure, and revisionism that surrounds us, then we too risk becoming complicit in a second erasure, not by the Nazis, but by indifference.
The horrors of the Kumen are not abstract, nor are they distant history. Anti-Semitism does not exist merely as a relic of the past. It is a tangible threat that we are facing here and now. This is what it means to say that history is living. Not that the Kumen is repeating itself, but that the conditions of hatred, if left unchecked, will take seed and rise again. The massacre at Bondi Beach did not arise of nothing. What started with casual slurs became graffiti on walls, abuse in the streets, and culminated in 15 deaths. Unthinkably, here in Australia, the very land our parents and grandparents came to escape the anti-Semitism they experienced in Europe.
This is what Nicht vergeben demands of us. Not only that we refuse to forget the crimes of the past, but that we refuse to be passive in the present. To stand up against anti-Semitism, to stand against racism, to stand against injustice. To stand for Gerechtigkeit is vital. Tonight, we light 6 candles to honour those who we lost. Their light shines a responsibility we carry into the future.
Nicht vergessen, nicht vergeben.
Koved, zeyer, lichtigen ondenk.
When I was a young boy at SKIF, learning about the Holocaust, we rightfully celebrated those heroes who engaged in armed resistance against the Nazis. For me, the most memorable was David Hochberg. His bravery and epic sacrifice during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was so captivating, he became something of a mythical figure in my imagination. This is how Marek Edelman described Hochberg's death. When the Germans approached the bunker, where 5 battle groups and several hundred civilians were sheltered, and their death seemed inevitable, David relinquished his weapons and blocked the narrow passageway with his own body. In this position, he was killed by the Germans, but before his wedged-in body could be removed, the entire civilian group, as well as the partisans, had time to leave the endangered shelter, end quote. Hochberg, alongside the other young fighters like him, was undoubtedly a hero. It wasn't until I was much older, though, that I began to take a more nuanced view of heroism during the Holocaust. And it was only recently that I began to reflect more deeply about how heroism could be found in some of the most mundane places during the Holocaust. However, it would take a stranger to show me that it was possible by piecing together letters, documents, and testimonies to discover the hidden heroism within my own family. In the introduction to the collection of essays, the Oxford Handbook of Holocaust Studies, Peter Hayes and John Roth say that identifying Jews as victims is a classification long employed in Holocaust studies. However, they say, this asks more questions than it answers because it underplays the active stance of Jews who at every turn did what they could to defend and preserve their lives. Historian Lenore Weitzman explores the nuances of resistance during the Holocaust, arguing that Jewish mothers resisted German policies by striving to keep their families alive. Women in the ghettos, Weitzman says, were instrumental in maintaining illegal schools and helping with rescues. Weitzman maintains that another gender-specific coping strategy noted in many memoirs was the sharing of recipes as a response to hunger and affirmation of identity. This had a powerful psychological effect because it affirmed the will to live. In 2019, I interviewed my grandmother, Sonia Cowan, who is now 102 years old. I interviewed her here at the Holocaust Museum. At the time, I didn't realise it would be the first of dozens of interviews and now a PhD project. Sonia was born in Berlin to Polish parents in 1923, the middle of 3 sisters. Her father died when she was just 18 months old. I didn't really know much about Sonia's mother Tolba and her older sister Lottie, who were murdered during the Holocaust. At least not until the months before that first interview, when Sonia and I began translating letters written in 1939 and 1940 by her mother Toba and older sister Lottie. These letters were addressed to my grandmother Sonia and her younger sister Ursula. However, Ursula, who had left Germany before Sonia, kept the letters private and did not share them for unknown reasons until shortly before her death in 1999. Sonia was already well into her senior years when she read those letters for the first time. They mentioned places, names, and youth movements that I had no idea were part of my family history. From the time I was a child, Sonia described her mother in distant and austere terms. In that first interview at the Holocaust Museum, Sonia shared details I'd not heard before, including how she received only a handshake and not even a farewell hug in the final goodbye with her mother. I saw Sonia cry for the first time, recalling that farewell. One reason I felt it was so important to interview Sonia was that the letters subtly diverged from the narrative Sonia had told about her family and her escape from Nazi Germany. I was deeply moved by the affection Sonia's mother Toba conveyed in her writing. This was among the intriguing discrepancies in Sonia's narrative. The letters presented an unexpected challenge, though, because they were written in a Gothic German script known as Sutelin, that is illegible even to native German readers. The script was banned by the Nazis in 1941 under the false pretext that it contained Jewish letters. In my search for translators and experts, I eventually found a German academic called Michael Wormke, who helped me decipher the letters and became invested in my journey. He is also an expert in German Jewish youth movements, including Bachad, the religious Zionist group that trained Jewish children in agricultural skills in the hope of evacuating them to Palestine. My grandmother was a member of this youth movement, as was her older sister, Lottie. By August 1939, Sonia had been in a village called Steckelsdorf for some time with the Bachad youth movement when its leaders called her name at an assembly and ordered her to return to Berlin. She was not going to Palestine after all, but to Britain. Somehow, someone had secured a spot for her on the Kindertransport, the refugee program in which 10,000 Jewish children aged under 17 were evacuated to the United Kingdom. The British government, however, would not accept their parents. Michael Wormke, the expert, said Toba must have urged and even hassled community leaders to secure places for Sonia and her younger sister Ursula on the Kindertransport. Despite their impoverished circumstances and the extremely narrow number of options available to her, Toba found a way. She had no money, Michael said. She only had herself. This fight to save her children and remain involved in their lives was a form of resistance against Nazi oppression, Michael argued. It's very important to show this, he said. They were not only hapless victims. Late last year, Michael drove me to Steckelsdorf, near Berlin, to see where my Bubba learned agricultural skills. Today, it is a home for very troubled children, but the house, rooms and grounds remain. Standing outside the Tolben house, or Dove's house, where Sonia and the other girls slept, I interviewed Michael again while standing on the grounds. Toba, I think, was the hero of the family, he told me. Not only did she apparently secure passage for her youngest daughters on the Kindertransport, in her writing, she constantly requests more information and updates from the girls. She sent advice, and it seems, even clothing too. Toba tried to parent her girls from an impossible distance, all the while assuring them they were loved. But the letters asked something much deeper of me, even though I was not the intended recipient. Had I delivered on the generational promise that comes with being the grandchild of Holocaust survivors? As a member of the so-called third generation, kids like me grew up in the homes of Holocaust survivors. We were surrounded by their love, and yes, probably even spoiled by them. Some of us were beneficiaries of our grandparents' decision to begin speaking about their experiences for the first time. or at least speaking openly. Research shows that in some cases, Holocaust survivors shared more about their experiences with their grandchildren than they did with their own sons and daughters. But it was only when I became an adult and 3 of my grandparents had already died that I began to wonder if I had squandered that gift. But then the letters, combined with my grandmother Sonia's longevity and excellent memory, has given me the opportunity to make good on that generational compact between survivors and their grandchildren. I've asked Sonia just about every possible question I can imagine about her experiences and upbringing. I believe Sonia is an incredibly reliable narrator of her past, but in some cases I've challenged her narrative, particularly when documents like the letters differ from the things that she has told me. I believe that challenging a survivor's narrative with love and respect when it diverges from the historical record could yield new insights into the meaning they derive from their experiences. In that way, I hope to contribute to better understanding the lives of Holocaust survivors and how their narratives shape the identities of their descendants. But even during my research, I do wonder how my children and other members of the 4th generation will carry this legacy forward. I believe we need more literature and research, documentaries, and modern interpretations of songs and music composed during the Holocaust. How this is done in future is a complex challenge the 4th generation faces. Now, as SKIF celebrates its 100th birthday, the current and recent ex-Helfer are among those who carry that legacy. But if the young people I know are any guide, they will do all those things and more. I do believe the youths in our community will mobilise their significant intellectual and creative resources. This will help deepen our understanding of the actions of people like my great-grandmother, who showed great courage and determination despite the impossible circumstances. So I hope the 4th generation will keep asking questions and exploring new historical territory so we can continue to Koved, zeyer, ondenk.
Hero, the brave one, selfless, often in danger. A hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with his or her freedom. Tonight in our commemoration, we remember, we honour the heroes, the fighters, organisers, partisans, silent resistors, couriers, doctors, nurses, artists, musicians, a mother who forgoes food for her child. They resisted, they fought, gave courage, saved lives.
Er Held, der, was hat in der grausamen Zeit von Mord von Hunger gesagt, sagt nicht keinmal. Die, was haben in Wilner Ghetto geschmolzen, die jüdische Druck, euch ja so machen können, sie haben getäuscht, sehr jüdische Geist zu schaffen physische Widerstandmitteln. Avomzutzgewehr ist gewesen als er Held. Mucke geben seine Mitkämpfer mit seiner Poesie. Ist gewesen eine Mitgliedern Arbeitsgruppe, was die Nazis haben versammelt zu liquidieren die Materialien. Sie haben die Materialien behalten und gerettet die jüdische Ausges.
Ringelblum was the ideological father of armed resistance of the Bund. He was physically very weak, but of exceptional force of conviction and strength of character. He was always the one to decide about the most momentous actions in the uprising, and he always sided with the youth. He did not permit the flame of zeal and work to die out. Calm and collected in the most difficult moments, he was forever thinking of and looking after somebody else. He simply considered it his duty, as he always did, with the most difficult assignments. He carried no weapons, but he was a partisan nonetheless.
My name is Ringelblum. As part of the Zukunft Central Committee, Secretary of the Seashore Schools, and a member of the Warsaw City Council, Krochmalna District, I was in touch with the Jewish youth of Warsaw and Poland. From the onset of war, I advocated the position that Jews should defend themselves. After the Bund leadership left Warsaw for the Soviet-controlled sector, Maurice Orzech and I became delegates to the ZOB, the Jewish Combat Organization. Later, together with Berek Schneidmill, we led the Bundes Defense Forces in the ghetto. One day, Michael Klettfish came and asked for my help as an engineer to oversee the production of hand grenades. We built many Molotov bomb devices. During the first days of the uprising in the ghetto, I telephoned reports to the Chaverim on the Aryan side. Very soon, my attention turned to providing encouragement to our fighters, even though many had already died in battle. I wrote out my last will and testament just in case. My luck was to escape through the sewers to the Aryan side. The partisans in the Campinos forest were brave. However, I felt I was needed in the ghetto. I returned and stayed in the apartment of Vladka. I carried on directing and supporting our fighters. I craved a piece of cake and asked a courier if on her way back she could get me a piece of lekech. In the meantime, the Gestapo knocked. "Vladka, tie the bedsheets together. Throw them out the window and let's escape." Vladka made it down. My grip was weak, I fell and broke my legs. The Gestapo captured me.
Ringelblum was 39 years old at the time of his death, making him one of the oldest of the fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. He was granted the Medal of Virtuti Militari posthumously by the Polish government in 1945.
Und hoch über Chorves, und hoch über Dechel, die von dem Ghetto, in Feuer sie flattert. A peinlicher Keul hat sie dreimal gelächelt. Der Wächter, nimmt nicht herab von seiner Augen. Steht wie eine Festung, was weiß nicht kein Wackel. Steht wie ein Schlagmann, die von ist sein Fackel. Es schießen die Geslach, die Gärten erschießen. Es schießen die Tisch, die Bank und die Dillen. Die Mammes mit kindischen Augen die Miede, die sind, was fallen in Gassen und wieder. Sie schießen, sie leben, sie starben, sie schießen. Ne komme, ein Wunsch glitt in ihre Schabens, ein Traum nur, die von dem Volk soll nicht sterben.
Von wannen hat sich zu unserer Kämpfer genommen als Gwore in Anblick von Tod. Die Gwore hat anprägt die historische Heldigkeit von amaliger jiddischer Martyre, Makkabäer, Bar Kochbau und von der nannten Vergangenheit Gwore von Bund mit seiner Heldigkeit, dem Schuster Hirsch geleckert. Welcher hat mit seinem Leben verheiligt den Namen von Kämpfer, dem Sozialist. Von der Erziehung in Jugendbund, Zukunft, SKIF und andere Organisationen haben die Kämpfer genommen den Mut.
4 courageous Zukunft Bund fighters and members of the ZOB, the Jewish Combat Organization, were Jurek Blones, David Hochberg, Tobsha Davidovich, and Michael Klettfish, symbols of courage, heroism, and the fight for freedom. Let's imagine how the 4 discussed their fight for freedom.
Jurek, did your 13-year-old brother Lushek find more bottles? He is an amazing runner for our underground activities. And yes, he found some bottles and also found a store of benzene. We can now make another 77 Molotov bombs.
And what about your sister, Gutta? Is she okay?
She is well and working in the children's soup kitchen on Shentayevska Street. She is also training with guns. She wants to fight.
Jurek, make sure your brother Lushak is careful. He only recently became a Helfer in SKIF. He is part of the elite SKIF Kreis Mishalevич's grandchildren, a treasured part of our youth movement.
Jurek, last week, I heard you went over the wall.
Well, you and Abrocha asked me to go and find weapons and ammunition. Our comrades in the forest had some, but were reluctant to part with them. I convinced them that our fight and struggle was more important.
That is the same opinion I have. Living in the fighters' commune and training to fight, I was so proud to receive my revolver because my leader, Velvo Rozovsky, thought I needed to defend myself whilst doing my liaison work between the fighting groups.
That's the attitude. We need to fight. I've been a member of the Je Aubert for 3 years, and my mother still tells me off for my involvement. She says, "You're such a good sportsman. Why risk your life?"
You three are just what we need. Abasha and I are proud of your actions and attitude.
You won't believe it. Last week, I was made the commander of a fighting unit. Marek Edelman is my leader. My unit will be stationed near the corner of Miller and Zamenhof Street. I've learned where all the safe bunkers are and the routes of escape that we may need when the fighting begins.
Michal, I remember how you changed us into a fighting unit. Tell us again. I love that story. It gives us courage.
The Bund's self-defense group was already partially trained and had the discipline to work as a team. A Polish underground colleague taught me military tactics and how to assemble bombs and hand grenades. I passed all the information to the Je Aubert. You, Jurek, have been working with me now for 4 months and have perfected the work.
I hear the fight. Our uprising is imminent. Let's take our positions.
Jurek Blones was the 18-year-old commander of a battle group in the Brushmakers area. Twice, during the hardest fighting, when everything seemed lost, when everyone around him was already giving up, he remained on his post alone and fought off the Germans single-handedly, thus saving not only partisans' lives, but the lives of hundreds of civilians as well. He did not live to tell the tale.
David Hochberg was the 17-year-old battle group commander in the central ghetto. When the Germans approached a bunker where 5 battle groups and several hundred civilians were sheltered and their death seemed inevitable, David relinquished his weapons and blocked the narrow passageway with his own body. In this position, he was killed by the Germans. But before his wedged-in body could be removed, the entire civilian group, as well as the partisans, had time to leave the endangered shelter.
Tobsha Davidovitz was the liaison between the Schultz and Tobins areas during the fighting. She walked that horrible path under fire more than a dozen times. When she led her group for the last time to the sewer entrance, she sprained an ankle and could no longer walk unaided. Her friends helped her along, but when, the last in line, she was about to enter the sewer trap door, she said, "I shall not come along. I do not want to make the difficult passage still more difficult for you." She remained in the ghetto, alone, where she perished.
Michal Klepfisch escaped from a train destined for Treblinka. In the ghetto, he directed the underground production of explosives. He tested the explosives in an underground lime kiln. He served as an intermediary between the Je Aubert and the Polish Home Army. He was killed on the second day of the uprising on Bonifraterska Street in the Brush district, protecting the retreat of his fellow soldiers, including Marek Edelman, by covering a German machine gun with his own body. The Polish government in exile decorated him with a silver Virtuti Militari.
courageous, lucky few men and women escaped to the forest to fight against the Nazis. They scrounged for weapons, made tentative alliances with other fighting groups to hinder the Nazi Wehrmacht by using guerrilla tactics. In towns and forests, resistance groups were formed. They blew up communication systems, sabotaged and blocked roads, and blew up trains. They couriered information between cities and ghettos. They were Jewish fighters who restored a morale. Many songs and poems were written of their bravery and sacrifice.
Von die Ghettos twise Wend, in die Wälder freie. Anstatt Keiten auf die Hand, ich halt a Bix a nahe. Auf die Oibgaves, mein Freund, kusch mir Haut und Achsel. Mit der Bix, ich bin nicht von Heint, fest zu neu gewachsen. Wenig seien mir in Zoll, dreiste 4 Millionen. Reißen mir auf Barg und Hall, Bricken, Echalonen. Der Faschist verzittert wird, weiß nicht wo, von wannen. Stürmen von unterdreht, jeden Partisaner. Sfortne komme, hat er sehen, wenn mit Blut verschreibt man. Vor dem heiligen Beginn, vieren mir die Streien. Nein, wir wollen keinmal sein, Lester, Mohikaner. Sprengt der Nacht die Sonnenschein, der Jid, der Partisaner.
A great pediatrician who devoted his life to enriching the lives of children, for whom he eventually laid down his own life, reminds us that courage and heroism does not only belong to fighters, it is an equally estimable virtue. Janusz Korczak's work as a physician, educator, children's author, and defender and protector of children serves as a powerful example of kindness, selflessness, courage, and dedication.
My name is Henrik Goldschmidt. My pen name, Janusz Korczak. I became a paediatrician and began to look after orphans in Warsaw. I tried to build responsibility in the children by making them assume the role of citizens, have them make the rules, conduct a court to handle disputes, produce their own newspaper, stage plays. I wrote books, hosted my own radio program. I believe that all that is required for children to fulfill their inner potential for goodness and responsibility is for them to receive the appropriate care, to be taken seriously, treated with tenderness and respect. In 1926, I suggested a Declaration of Children's Rights. It makes me proud to know that this was accepted into the Geneva Convention. Our orphanage had to move into the Warsaw Ghetto. For the children, the same activities were conducted. I kept a diary of the ghetto days of despair and terror, the constant battle to find food and hope. In August 1942, the Nazis came to collect the children for transport. I knew what that meant. I told the orphans they were going out into the country, so they ought to be cheerful. At last, they would be able to exchange the horrible, suffocating city walls for meadows of flowers, streams where they could bathe, see woods full of berries and mushrooms. I made the children dress in their best clothes and that they had their favourite toy or book. I had to accompany them, make them feel safe.
My name is Vladislav Spilman. On the 5th of August, when I'd taken a brief rest from work and was walking down Giesia Street, I happened to see Janusz Korczak and his orphans leaving the ghetto. The evacuation of the Jewish orphanage run by Janusz Korczak had been ordered for that morning. The children were to have been taken away alone. He had the chance to save himself, and it was only with difficulty that he persuaded the Germans to take him too. He had spent the long years of his life with children, and now, on this last journey, he could not leave them alone. He wanted to ease things for them. When I met them in Giesia Street, the smiling children were singing in chorus. A little violinist was playing for them, and Korczak was carrying two of the smallest infants who were beaming. I heard him say, "It's all right, children, it will be all right," so that at least he could spare his little charges the fear of passing from life to death.
Abrasha and I moved to Warsaw, and I became director of the Nurses' College at the Jewish Hospital on Tisha Street. I particularly liked working in the YAF, Jewish Working Women Organization, an offshoot of the Bund, teaching young women about their rights and, of course, nursing and health. Together with my husband Abrasha, we became very active in the Bund. In the first days of the war, our flat was bombed. I rescued our children and moved to another apartment. Under the stringent Nazi occupation, I continued to run the nurses' school in the ghetto near the Umschlagplatz. The nurses and I actively played a role in saving many children from being deported. We saved sick children and the elderly from the Nazis by at least ensuring them a quiet death in a clean hospital. After the war, I remained in Warsaw to run the children's orphanage in Otwock and became mother to hundreds of Jewish children returning from their hiding places, the camps, and partisan groups.
Lasst mich endigen mein Lied, was angehoben hat die Mame bei mein Wiegele, und halbe Nacht zerbrochen, schwach und müd. Gewiegt, verwiegt mich mit der golden Ziegele. Lasst mich endigen mein Lied, mit was hab angehoben sich zu weisen, mit nicht sichere, mit erster Tritt. Nach Daten zwischen Umku, Scher und Eisen.
Das Lied von Aufkommen und von Umkommen. Das Lied, was meine Brüder haben euch in Ghettos gesungen. Und im Kampf. Nicht lassen dich sich lebendig begraben. Lass mich endlich mein Lied auf Mama lassen. Jiddisch. Das gekeulete Gesang von jener Tag. Wenn Gefangener beim Tod hat euch geschrieben. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg.